don't share equitably, and they foul the land. They dirty the bowl for all of us. They dirty the bowl for all of us now and for generations to come. So when we demand freedom and land back, we're not looking for dirty, useless land that's no longer fit for human use. We need the land back so that we can take care of it like the Haudenosaunee Confederation and the Anishinaabe peoples did before us. Like we need to carry forward the teaching of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant. Thank you. Today we're gathered, some of us came from another rally, so I'll let you know that this is actually Power Up for Climate Change. And I'm very happy to welcome some friends here. First of all, you heard us as we came in, the Action Beats Collective, folks who drum for human rights and labor causes and other things in the community. We may hear a bit more from them presently. Is Daniel Hill here? I was supposed to welcome Daniel Hill, but if Daniel Hill is here, she can come and introduce herself to Patti or to me.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out.
Sure. Jess, the importance of the connection between lands. We heard a lot a few minutes ago at the other corner of the park about people's family who are particularly vulnerable because they're in Gaza today. People who've lost their lives, people who are in danger of losing their lives. One of the expressions that I've learned from our Indigenous sisters and brothers is when we talk about peace, we're talking about all of our relations. So we're talking about our specific relations that we know about, our cousins and our families elsewhere, but we're also talking about all of our relations in many generations in the human family and in everybody that's sustained by Mother Earth. And this is one of the teachings that I'm very grateful for people like our next speaker. So I'd like you to give it up for my colleague, Dr. Jess Notwell from King's University College. Jess.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Jess Notwell. Migisho Getsuau. Nehiyaw katipim sotsik munyaw. Nigo twasik vitaski winostas moyaswi win nehiyaw askiwin. What's in yakehte? Deshkon zibing megwats niwigan. Hi, my name is Jess. I'm a guest here on these territories. The treaty that is called the London Township Treaty is numbered Treaty 6, but the original Treaty 6 territory is in northern Saskatchewan, which is my Indigenous family's traditional territory. I'm Métis, Cree Métis on my mom's side and white settler on my dad's side. And I wanted to make the connection, as David said, between ending genocide, between rising up as Indigenous peoples from Turtle Island to Palestine, and ending the climate crisis. One of our traditions is when we give birth, as part of the birthing ceremony, we save the umbilical cord. And often we decorate a beautiful little bag and we save that umbilical cord until it's time for the ceremony, when with that little one we bury the umbilical cord in the ground so that that child always knows the territory that they belong to, so that that child can always find their way home. And when Mahmoud Darwish writes, "We in our land are one flesh, one bone," when he writes, "The land is our mother," it is that idea that Indigenous people of every territory belong to and are connected to that land across generations and for eternity, that nothing can break that connection, and that we care for those territories in so many ways. Artist Rehab Nazal, she's done some photography and video work in the destroyed villages of Lifta and in Yalo and Imwash, Imwas and Beit Nuba, which have been covered by the so-called Canada Park, colonized, right, by all those trees planted through the Jewish National Fund. And the work that she's done shows that the plants that Palestinian families have gathered and cared for centuries are coming back. They are reclaiming those destroyed villages. Those plant relatives, those more than human relations, are saying no to Israeli settler colonialism, and they are reclaiming those villages. And that relationship between Palestinian families who belong to those territories, and those plants can never be broken, and the plants are showing that by their return to the villages while they wait for the families to come home.
Yes.
That connection will never be broken. And Indigenous people around the world care for our Earth Mother in so many ways. So that the terraced gardens that Palestinian families have planted across the territories of Palestine, that have prevented soil erosion, that have sustained those relationships between the people and the land, the caring for the water resources. You hear us say from Standing Rock to Wet'suwet'en, water is life. And water is life in Palestine also. And the fact that 90%, 97% of the water in Gaza is contaminated and undrinkable is happening because of settler colonialism. It's happening because the bombs are making the water and the land toxic. It's happening because it is impossible to fix the sewage and water purification systems if you can't get any equipment to fix them. It is happening because raw sewage is going into the ocean in Gaza. How is that different from Chippewas of the Thames First Nation and Munsee Delaware Nation and Oneonta Oneida Nation of the Thames not having clean water because the contaminated water from London is flowing downstream? Settler colonialism is just directly harming our Earth Mother. That exploitation of what we call relatives, the water and the land that we call relatives, that the colonizer calls resources. That $524 billion worth of oil and gas that the Israeli settler colonial machinery wants to extract from the seabed, from the land, from the West Bank. Here, we say no to the black snake, we say no to the oil pipelines, we say no to the gas pipelines. In Standing Rock and in Wet'suwet'en, we say it's harming our Earth Mother, it's threatening our lives 7 generations ahead. Our babies, 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 we want them to be able to thrive. And in Gaza also, when people return, when people claim that right of return, when people go home, they want their babies to be able to live on the land safely and with health and to thrive. And so if we continue to interconnect our struggles, if we continue to understand from Turtle Island to Palestine, we need to be free, us and our Earth Mother, and sustain that relationship. We will all be able to rise together for freedom. Thank you.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire in Gaza and cease the violence and the war against the land and the people of the land here. If Penn Kemp is here, could you make your way up towards us someplace? Penn Kemp, the poet. And, I'm sorry, it's a long list, folks. Lizzie Ketchum. Okay. I hope you find your way up here soon. I'm still looking for Danielle and Miriam, drum sisters from Positive Voice. Okay, could be a shorter program than we planned. Anyway, I did forget to mention that Jess, who we just heard from, is a citizen of the Métis Nation of Ontario and nehiyaw Métis settler from an assistant professor at King's College. She teaches from Turtle Island to Palestine decolonization. She researches and enacts decolonization. I'd like to introduce now somebody who also has family to talk about and a connection with the land of Gaza. Hayat Abuzayed is a Western student with family in Gaza. Hayat, come on up. And I have to say, I actually knew Hayat's family before, but I didn't know that this was who I knew. I read a week ago at Western, I read some words from her cousin Noah Diab. Because Noah was explaining to us through The Guardian, a very large newspaper, the importance of keeping marching for peace and human rights. And then I discovered that, in fact, her family was here because Hayat and her sister came up and introduced themselves. It's given me great pleasure to pass the mic to Hayat.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and stand in front of you all and speak. My name is Hayat Abuzayed. I was born in Gaza, and I'm a daughter of Palestine and the land of Palestine and the olive trees, and I'm a daughter of the sea. And so the climate crisis occurring in Canada has a lot of parallels between the climate crisis occurring in Palestine. In Canada, we've seen Canada continuously extract billions of dollars worth of natural resources on Indigenous land without including Indigenous leaders. And this is wrongful and unlawful and illegal.
Shame!
Shame!
In Palestine as well, we are seeing Israel also extracting natural resources such as oil and gas from Gaza and polluting our environment, our land, destroying our olive trees, destroying our homes.
Shame! Shame!
And also we've seen for years Canada has been supporting Israel through billions of dollars in funding. While our planet is crying out for help, Canada is not listening. And therefore, as Jess was saying, we must stand together in decolonization from Turtle Island to Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayat.
Free, free Palestine!
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 Folks, Penn Kemp is a poet, playwright, and performer. She was London's inaugural poet laureate from 2010 to 2013. She has long been an activist in Canada's cultural life, more than 30 books of poetry, prose, and drama, 7 plays, and 10 CDs produced, as well as award-winning video poems. The issue of climate change is very dear to her heart. She's produced work on environmental themes such as the DVD Luminous Entrance, a sound opera for climate change action. Penn's going to give us a couple of poems.
I'm first going to talk to you. Can you hear me? Yes. Is that on? Thank you. Yes. About water, because a friend of mine just produced a book. I loved what the last 2 speakers were talking about in terms of water, but Ellen Leuenberg, has produced a book for kids on the connectivity of water. So I will read you a poem or 2, but I'm going to read you this. Oh dear, I'm right here. Joey said, "You know we need to plant more trees and not just cut them down. I wish there was a place where I could get lots of kids together to plant trees and make a new forest. Then I'd really be helping to stop climate change." So that's on Amazon, which I don't use, but maybe you do. And I recommend it highly. And this was performed at Aeolian Hall. It's called Fair Trade. I would eat local food only were it not for temptation. A green invitation of open avocado in emerald halves, an alluring variety of mango, hot to eye, cool to tongue. I can hold it now, David. Yep. The seduction of dark chocolates, the slurped fulfillment in oyster, the simple necessity of rice. Otherwise, I would be content with my yard's fall produce, but having tasted the World's Fair, how to return unjaded to simple pleasures that this ground offers? Beans, corn, squash, corn, beans, squash. The 3 sisters thrive. Yes, I will eat local food, mostly, except. Oh, chocolate, oh, coffee. Chicory can never compare to cafe, ole. On to political rant. Our food too cheap, our farmers ruined. Our eyes closed, we rest easy. Ripe fruit spoils on the dock, sleepy to sun rotten. Given so much, we reach for more even when full, and poems break off as the lunch bell rings. The last poem I'll do is a poem for peace, which I hope I can remember. I probably can't, but God, I wish there were peace. That's, I think, my poem. Here's to peace. Can't remember the poem, but I'm for peace.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Penn. Water is life here and in across Turtle Island and in Palestine. So I think it's a common message that we can repeat. Water is life. Water is life. Water is life. Water is life.
Water is life.
Okay, I'm still looking for Lizzie Ketchum, Danielle and Miriam, the drum sisters from Positive Voice. You, Lizzie? Okay. Glad to meet you. Come on up. Lizzie Ketchum is incredibly passionate about social justice issues. She hopes to go into environmental engineering. She's coordinated a variety of environmental events in Toronto, and she's ready to bring it all to London. From designing pamphlets about environmental racism to organizing community cleanups, she's well versed in the background and in the systems of current environmental issues. Lizzie.
Hello, can you hear me? What is sustainability? You can define it as the ability to maintain the environment at the same rate, but it's so much more than that. It's a lifestyle, a call for justice, accountability. Sustainability is a total transformation in the way we think about our own lives hanging the balance of environmental issues. We walk on this land, we breathe this air, we drink this water. We are all a part of this. This issue just isn't in faraway places. It's existing here every single day. Maybe you've only experienced a glimpse. Smoke from fires spreading over the country, or more intense weather every year. But it's enough to prove to you that it's there. If the world is destroyed, it will affect every single one of us. What can a single person do to stop this? What can individuals do to help this? A lot. Change is made through many individuals, and if we stand together, we can save our planet. Show the government, the people who make the policies, that we will not let them hurt our earth or our people any more than they already have been hurt. Just being here today, taking part in events like this, means that we are a force to be reckoned with. We are the change of tomorrow because we stand together, and we stand strong. In our own lives, we can make a difference. We can stop things like the overflowing amount of waste in the world on an individual level. The waste. Think about this. Let's count to 3. All right, together? 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds, the largest whale on Earth, the blue whale, was thrown away only from household waste globally. I'm trying to say it isn't just the companies, the governments, these big corporations that are hurting our Earth. It's all of us. The big guys are only a part of the problem. I'm not saying we don't hold them accountable, but there's more that you can do. Take a stand on an individual level. Maybe you choose not to participate in fast fashion, not getting clothes just to follow the trends. Maybe you choose to use reusable items daily. Recycle, bike, plant. These things matter. Be creative. Make your own difference. We can solve this together by taking action. So take action. Educate yourself. Advocate for change in your community. Understand that not everyone has the same opportunity to fight climate change, and stand up against the barriers that hold people back. You have power. Power in your communities, power as an individual. Stand up for injustices that you see. Speak up. Let everyone hear you. We don't have another planet. We don't have a second Earth. So let us cherish what we do have. Together, we can ensure our future. The United Nations recognize the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. The dream everyone is working for. All we have to do is fight for it. Work for it on our own scale and change our communities. So what if the damage is so immense? So what if the problems are so much bigger? So what if it seems hopeless sometimes? Us, together, can change the world. You just have to take the first step.
Thank you, Lizzie.
No more coal, no more oil. Keep the carbon in the soil.
No more oil, no more coal. This carbon in the soil. No more coal, no more oil. Keep the carbon in the soil. No more coal, no more oil. Keep the carbon in the soil. Thanks, Lizzie. I am still looking for Danielle and Miriam, but also Jasmine and Anna, Dr. Anna Guns. So make your way up here. Any of the aforementioned. Hey. Hi, Jasmine. Jasmine McRorie, a youth activist who grew up in London and organized at the local, provincial, national, and international levels. She regularly volunteers in the environmental community and is currently serving as community engagement specialist for the charity London Environmental Network. Jasmine.
Hello, thank you guys so much for having me.
Get really close to the mic.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me a bit better. It's so disappointing and heartbreaking to see how many crises I and my generation have inherited. From Palestine to the climate crisis, to Black Lives Matter and the trans rights that are being taken away every day. I started as a youth activist, I say in grade 10, but I've been a youth activist my entire life. From eco clubs to cleanups to even caring about the local fishing systems that I was trying to partake in. I remember my first climate strike I went out to for Fridays for Future. I was in grade 10, I'd walked there from school, and I was terrified that I wasn't enough of an activist. I was worried I'd be judged for not having a reusable cup. I was worried that the plastic in my bag was going to prohibit me from being a voice for my generation. What I learned there was that we are a community. We're not all perfect. We make mistakes. Sometimes environmental action isn't accessible to everyone, especially lower income people. What we're asking for is for City Council and for national governments to make changes so that everyone can be a climate activist. Oh, gotta go around.
Go that way.
Thank you.
There's a long list here. Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you, Jasmine. Still looking for Dr. Anna Guns. Still looking for Danielle and Miriam, the drum sisters. Not giving up hope on the drum sisters. Okay.
Dirka.
Dirka?
Dirka is here. Dirka,
I've definitely seen Dirka Prout.
There we go.
Dirka Prout, you can't hide.
Come on up, Dirka, and I just want to say as I take over for Beth emceeing, so fantastic to see everybody here, and thank you to everybody who was at the Free Palestine rally for coming here. We really appreciate it. We know that issues are interconnected. It's so fantastic to see you here. For anybody who doesn't know me, Patti Dalton, President, London and District Labour Council. I've been so pleased to be part of this organizing effort for the Climate Action Rally today. And it is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dirka Prout, known to a lot of people here. She is a self-described Poli Engineer. She's a geotechnical engineer who works on provincial and municipal infrastructure projects. And she has twice been a candidate for the federal NDP in London North Centre. Welcome, Dirka.
Thank you, Patti. You know, a couple weeks ago, I attended a talk about the determination of tornado wind speeds by Dr. Greg Kopp, a Western University professor and lead researcher in the Northern Tornadoes Project. According to the project's website, the goal is to improve detection and understanding of tornadoes. better mitigate harms to people and property, and explore future implication of climate change. One of the beneficial side effects of side outcomes of the Northern Tornadoes project is that they share this information with public agencies who write the building codes and the municipalities who enforce the codes and issue building permits. But noting that those codes mostly affect new builds, I asked Dr. Kopp about a question that what could be done to protect existing structures. His answer both surprised me and quickly progressed from the realm of engineering to public policy, social science, and environmental justice. I'd like to speak to you a bit today about the intersection of environmental justice and public policy. It turns out that retrofitting an existing building to better protect it against tornadoes is generally a solvable engineering problem. The same can be said for retrofitting existing dwellings so that their occupants are not subject to energy poverty. In the energy efficiency realm, at any given time, there are rebates given by energy utilities and all three levels of government. Programs like the Canada Greener Homes Initiative leave out whole swaths of the population, renters and homeowners alike. Those left out are mainly low-income individuals, whether they live in rural or urban settings, elderly, disabled, and those suffering from health problems. The most affected are Indigenous peoples, primarily in rural and northern areas. In the Affordable Action Center this week issued a policy brief noting three major barriers to accessing the retrofit programs. High upfront cost. With stagnating wages and rising inflation, many low-income persons are debt-laden and cannot afford the high upfront costs to implement retrofits. Far less wait months or even years to get the rebate. Complex administration costs and gaps in eligibility. Those wishing to retrofit programs, to access those programs, have to wait a long time to complete a bunch of paperwork and do the assessments. Programs are based towards the owners of single-family detached homes, leaving many apartment renters and condo owners out in the cold. Overly narrow scope. Many retrofit programs focus on energy efficiency. While this is a laudable goal, Canada is increasingly buffeted by wildfires, floods, storms, and yes, even tornadoes. These three barriers amount to climate injustice. Why? The list of Canadians affected by climate change includes those at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, intersection with other identities such as disability, being Indigenous or racialized or immunocompromised. Canada is underperforming in the area of climate resiliency, which includes mitigation of climate disasters, because when wildfires, floods, and ice wind or snowstorms occur, political leaders, emergency responders, and ordinary Canadians on a whole, they do an excellent job of rendering assistance. But this is the best of Canada on display. Disaster recovery does get good attention, at least initially. But if you look at the case of persons who lost their home in the 2021 Barrie EF2 tornado, the majority of those homes have not been rebuilt. We can effectively diagnose what went wrong with emergency preparedness. This is thanks to the hard work of journalists and researchers like those at the Northern Tornado Project. However, there's a lack of timely follow-through with those recommendations. When governments fail to invest in climate mitigation and preparation, they fail Canadians. They widen the pool of people affected by climate injustice. In Ontario, the Financial Accountability Office reported that the backlog of repairs and upgrade steps infrastructure to resist climate change is at least $35 billion and counting. The Ford government's failure is to support Ontario municipalities that own and maintain the majority of this infrastructure is appalling. The Ford government has also cut funding to conservation authorities who assess flood risk and limit development in flood-prone areas. This failure of both federal and provincial governments to invest in climate mitigation and prevention exposes more and more Canadians to financial ruin, homelessness, and mental anguish. This at a time when we already have an affordability and housing crisis and inadequate mental health supports. So what can citizens do? Well, a lot, really. We need to pressure policymakers and elected officials at all levels of government to prioritize vulnerable populations and critical infrastructure. Demand that all retrofit programs benefit renters and low-income homeowners. Demand free and barrier-free retrofit programs focused on Indigenous communities, persons living in deep poverty with low income, seniors, disabled, and immunocompromised people. Environmental justice must be embedded in public policy on climate change. Every single culture and socio-economic background must be equitably protected from environmental and health hazards. Vulnerable communities should also be involved in the decision-making process. Safeguarding health and well-being is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let's work together to uphold this principle. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we should have a chant now, I think. Climate justice now! 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 Okay, excellent. Now we are looking for Gratiana Chen. She is here. Sorry, just walk upstairs. Just want to make sure everybody's safe. Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, okay, sorry. I just want to introduce you, Gratiana. So, sorry, that was me. Gratiana is a master's student at Western and part of the Climate Crisis Coalition there. This is an environmental justice campaign calling on Western University to address the urgency of the climate crisis and their complicity in settler colonial violence by ceasing to prop up the fossil fuel industry. Welcome.
Hi everyone, I'll be talking a lot about Western. Thank you. Western and how things affect Western students in particular, but I hope that you can resonate with some of this even if you don't attend Western or aren't as affiliated with Western. Like many of you here, I've done my best to reuse, reduce, recycle, repair, and repurpose, but I cannot help but feel like my actions mean little in the face of continued expansion of the fossil fuel industry. The industry responsible for nearly 90% of all CO2 emissions and the primary drivers of racial and colonial violence. It feels futile, like Sisyphus, my relentless vendetta against big fossil fuel, the industry whose profits continue to skyrocket each year, jumping 56% globally to $4 trillion USD in 2022. Perhaps to cope with these feelings of climate guilt and frustration, I joined the Climate Crisis Coalition about a month ago. By joining the CCC, I'm trying to take collective action to hold Western University accountable to their commitments to the Indigenous reconciliation and sustainability. The CCC has two campaigns to get fossil fuels off of our campus: fossil-free research and divest Western. First, the CCC promotes fossil-free research. In other words, banning the fossil fuel industry from funding climate change, environmental, and energy policy research. A 2023 report by Data for Progress found that $700 million USD are donated from 6 major fossil fuel companies to several of the top universities around the globe. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Oil and gas giants develop numerous research partnerships with universities. They have a clear agenda in doing so, making themselves look like legitimate partners in advancing climate solutions and having a role in the Thanks, everyone. And having a role in the production of knowledge around these solutions to undermine climate action. This is a blatant conflict of interest, and we will not stand for it. Our second campaign is demanding that Western University divest from fossil fuel industries, that is, taking their money away from the companies involved in extracting fossil fuels. If Western boasts to be the #1 university in sustainable development in Canada, then why do they have $64 million invested into fossil fuels? Why is Western profiting off of the climate crisis? Meanwhile, the devastating effects of the climate crisis are becoming impossible to ignore. Just look at this past summer, where the worst wildfires in Canadian history turned our skies ablaze from coast to coast. In the face of the clear climate and ecological crisis playing out across the world, and also right here in London, public institutions like Western University have the power and the responsibility to act. But at a time when we are in need of urgent climate leadership more than ever, Western is delaying action. 12 Canadian universities have taken a stand against fossil fuel corporations by committing to divestment, recognizing that they are primary drivers of the climate crisis and some of the largest perpetrators of racial and colonial violence. These universities acknowledge owning shares in fossil fuel companies was actively financing the destruction of the very futures they were supposed to be preparing their students for. These institutions have committed to removing their investment funds, such as endowment funds, from the fossil fuel industry. They've committed to divesting, but Western has not yet done so. Western is proud to deliver a world-class education, yet they refuse to listen to their own experts. They ignore the faculty who have devoted their life to researching climate change and who called for immediate fossil fuel divestment. They ignore about 200 other faculty, staff, graduate students who have echoed these calls for divestment. They ignore the tireless work of student advocates like the students in the University Student Council and 700+ student allies who have written policy papers and signed divestment petitions over the past 3 years. They ignore us, the students, whose futures are on the line. The good news is Western can divest and follow the lead of over 25,000 educational institutions globally who are divesting from fossil fuels. The Climate Crisis Coalition outlined clear recommendations for Western to stop greenwashing and live up to their commitments to sustainability and decolonization. We are far past the time for promoting half measures and false solutions. It's time for bold and tangible change and climate action. And if not now, then when?
Thank you so much. Hope Western hears that. Hope the admin hears that. Yeah, let's do it, Chen. Climate action now. 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 Okay, next, Bob Morrison. Just be careful. I know we were using this to come up, but I just want everybody to be safe as they're leaping up here. So Bob Morrison has been part of the organizing group as well for this event. He is a core team member from Climate Action London. He's a climate advocate, especially interested in systemic change that addresses mitigation and climate justice. He's also a wilderness enthusiast and a backcountry hiker. Welcome, Bob.
Yeah. Woo.
Hi, everyone. Is this working?
Yeah, and just speak right out loud. Just push your voice up.
Okay. Thanks so much. This year alone, oil and gas lobbyists had 778 meetings with the federal government. The lobbyists spend every day trying to ensure public funds are transferred to oil and gas companies. They lobby to continue oil gas expansion, continued or increased subsidies, and opposing or weakening legislation. In June, when Canada was burning with fires in Quebec, Alberta, and BC, they lobbied the government 131 times in that month alone. Canada's 5 biggest oil and gas companies had $38 billion in profits in 2022. This sector typically represents 5% of our GDP and less than 1% of our total employment. And over 70% of the major shareholders in the largest tar sand companies are foreign entities. And we're supposed to buy the myth that what is good for oil and gas companies is good for Canada. So the constant chant at rallies is systems change, not climate change.
System change, not climate change. System change, not climate change. System change, not climate change.
But what is system change? It seems pretty generic, right? Well, we know that given the inequalities in the climate crisis, the system is not working for most people, only the 1%. So I came up with my own top 6 list of big government changes at the federal level. Now I've listed all of these on our website, climateactionlondon.ca, where you can visit them. You can click on links and support and send a letter about these. And these are links to great organizations like 350.org, Environmental Defense, davidsuzuki.org, For Our Kids, Council of Canadians, and Canadian Physicians for the Environment. So just before I start my top 6 countdown, I want to say that personally I feel the biggest climate action you can take is vote. Vote, vote, vote. Vote federally, vote provincially, vote locally, right? Get your parents to vote, get your grandmothers to vote, your cousins, everybody to vote. Representation matters. When I was going to look up a nice, quote for voting, and I just came up with my own. So my quote is, "Injustice flourishes in the darkness of low voter turnout." What happened when there was low voter turnout recently?
Doug Ford stayed in.
Yeah. What government did we get?
Doug Ford.
So here's my top 6 countdown. Number 6, Sustainable Jobs Act. The Sustainable Jobs Act has gone through the 2nd reading and is not going to be debated in the House of Commons. And guess who's going to try to work to weaken it and delay it? The lobbyists, the oil and gas companies. Number 5, clean electricity standard. In August of this year, the Government of Canada released draft clean electricity regulations for public comment. If passed, the regulations would come into force in January 2025 and limit carbon emissions related to electricity generation that is connected to the public grids. Number 4, ban or require regulate fossil fuel advertising. Fossil fuel ads make us sick. Fossil fuel ads fail to inform us about the known health and environmental hazards of their products. Fossil fuel advertising undermines Canada's commitments to climate, and their greenwashing obstructs climate action. Number 3, Climate Aligned Finance Act. Canadian banks continue to finance fossil fuel expansion. They cannot be trusted to take the right actions themselves. So, I agree. Bill S-243, which is not very sexy sounding, but it's important, would ensure Canada's banks develop credible plans in line with climate science and commitments. Number 2, cap on oil and gas emissions. The federal government is deciding on a new approach to cap the oil and gas emissions and making sure those emissions go down over time. And number 1 in my list, windfall profits tax on unjust oil and gas company profits. It's time to make polluters pay.
Yes.
We know we can't trust these companies to direct their record profits into climate solutions. Our government needs to take the decisive action out of their hands and institute a windfall profits tax.
Yes. Climate change, no way. Tax the rich, make them pay. Climate change, no way. Tax the rich,
Make them pay.
climate change, no way.
Tax the rich, make them pay.
The industry is ready to attack all of these that I've listed, using their lobbying power to delay and weaken the legislation. But the government needs to hear from us. So, please visit climateactionlondon.ca. There's a link to the Power Up page, and you can support all of these. Also, follow up, contact your MP directly, and encourage others to learn more and take action themselves. So, to me, systems change, not climate change.
System change, not climate change.
System change, not climate change.
System change, not climate change.
Thanks, Bob. And now I'll introduce someone who's well known to many of you. He's a prof at UW. He's a remarkable lead activist in London, has been for decades. He's, of course, the co-chair of the Council of Canadians London chapter, and he was the MC of the rally this morning to free Palestine and a force with People for Peace. Welcome to David Heap to speak.
Let's go, David.
Hi folks, I'll be brief. I think the mic batteries, somebody told me the batteries are giving way, which is a good signal to be brief. We've heard from Bob about some of the changes we need to make. I need us to remind ourselves that we have the power. We shouldn't look to somebody else to do this for us. We are the people we've been waiting for. We shouldn't wait any longer. We have the power. We need to do this. We do this by following the money. Bob talked about the amount that lobbyists are spending to defend their profits. They're spending it to pervert the course of our democratic systems. We need to take those back. We need to point to the money, and we need to say, we don't need new sources of wealth to fund the action we need to stop climate change and save what's left of our planet. The wealth is there. We need to direct the wealth towards saving the planet instead of lining rich people's pockets and corporate pockets. Some of this can be done by taxing them. And the carbon tax is a nice tiny little step, a couple of decades too late, but it's in the right direction, except now they're backing up on the carbon tax. Because that's what politicians do. Yeah, shame. So taxing them is one important approach, but we need to do more to defund them. I'm seeing defund fossil fuels here, and we can do that in the way that Gratiana said, by getting institutions like my employer and hers, Western, important public institutions, to divest from fossil fuels. So divestment now is important at all levels. Okay, so it's institutions, it's municipalities, it's also our pension funds. If you have ever worked in this country and paid CPP, you are invested in fossil fuels, and you should demand that your investment defend your future, not put your future in danger. Investment boards visit these communities, but you shouldn't wait for them to visit. We should all demand, I shouldn't say you, we all need to demand that our investments in CPP be diverted away from planetary destruction and towards protecting the earth that sustains us all.
Yeah.
So we need to defund them. We need to divest from them. Divesting from them also means divesting from corporations like Chevron, as I mentioned at an earlier rally today, that is responsible for stealing Palestinian resources under the sea off Gaza, is responsible for the reasons behind the blockade of Gaza, the apartheid blockade of Gaza. But Chevron is an example of a corporation that, from the Amazon to the Arctic to the Middle East, is despoiling the earth, depriving indigenous people of their traditional lands, and lining their own pockets, and of course spending to influence our politicians. So we need to divest, we need to boycott these corporations, and ultimately we need the state to sanction them. We need some of the legislation that Bob mentioned, but we need to demand better. We can defund them on an individual level, but quite frankly, the amount I spend on, or you spend on petroleum products isn't going to get us there. We need our institutions to do it. We need our governments to do it at all levels. The Council of Canadians slogan, People, Planet, Democracy, we stand for, among other things, proportional representation. If Canadians had an electoral system that actually elected a government that represents us, they would not be as liable to being bought by corporations. So proportional representation is a terrible slogan. I'm not going to try to make you chant it, but look up Fair Vote Canada and understand how in every country that has proportional representation, they have better environmental policies, better human rights policies, better policies that reflect the will and the interests of their populations over the corporations. So we need to tax fossil fuel corporations, end this fossil foolishness that's destroying our planet. We need to divest from them. We need to cut their sources of funding. And ultimately, we need to say that all of these sources of wealth are not private goods. They are public goods. And if there's going to be a corporation, it needs to be publicly owned and publicly controlled. We don't want to take over more pipelines. We don't want to take over more gas fields in the public's name. We want those businesses to disappear and say that those sources of wealth need to fund the transition towards a green economy, a peaceful economy, economy that funds human needs, not corporate profits. And just as a reminder of who's going to do this, I came down to this T-shirt not because I love the maple leaf on the old Council of Canadians logo. Maple leaves are okay. It just doesn't always stand for stuff that I agree with. It's because on the back there's a slogan. You can come and read it later, from Maud Barlow, who is associated with water protection and environmental justice and economic justice. And Maud was fond of telling people at meetings, if you want to know who's going to save the planet, go home and look in the mirror. Nice. But don't go home yet. Look around before you go home. We are our friends here. The folks who showed up calling for a ceasefire to save Palestinians in Gaza are the same folks who are going to march with us until we see divestment from fossil fuels and a green economy, a peaceful economy in this country, until we shut down the death merchants who are sending war material overseas to oppress people and steal their resources. We march together for a greener planet, for a safer planet, for a more just economy. And I also want you to stick around because you want to see what this black ugly snake turns into when we hear from, in a few minutes, from a former co-chair of the local chapter of Council of Canadians, Roberta, the amazing artist who's going to explain this to us right after we hear from Patti Dalton, who is president of the London and District Labour Council and vice president of the Ontario Federation of Labour. Patti.
Last speech, I promise, and then you're going to love to see what's going to happen in terms of the street theater and the transformation of the water snake. Friends, we know that when climate crisis-related events happen, like wildfires, massive flooding, extreme heat, that workers are the first responders, and workers put their lives on the line to save lives and communities. So climate crisis is front and center for us in the labor movement. And we want to recognize, I want to recognize the incredible and dangerous work done by both unionized and non-unionized workers to keep people all across Canada as safe as possible and to do the work of rebuilding in communities after crisis events, which we are seeing are becoming so much more prevalent. We know that a historic transition must happen. Our jobs and our economy must transform, and that transition must be just. It must protect workers. It must ensure good, green, sustainable jobs, and there must be new pathways to these new jobs for women, Indigenous peoples, racialized people, and all equity groups. We note that the introduction of Bill C-50, the Sustainable Jobs Act, is a first step, and it does include many of our priorities in the labor movement, but it must be improved. And the federal government must take further actions, such as investing in training for workers and a just transition, recognizing climate change as a health and safety issue, and working with us to put new workplace measures in place to mitigate those effects, because it's very dangerous for workers in many ways. And they need to abide by the International Labour Organization guidelines on the just transition process. We have to have social dialogue, and unions must have a central seat at any decision-making tables. Social protections, labor rights, and health and safety rights at work, and again, good, green, sustainable jobs. The Canadian Labour Congress has a great campaign right now, and you can all help by signing up for it online. It's called A Future That Works. Please sign on to it. There will be ongoing actions. And thank you everyone for being here today. It's been fantastic. And let's all join in the fight for sustainable jobs and a sustainable future for all of us. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Tar sands, no thanks. It's time to tax the banks. Tar sands, no thanks. It's time to tax the banks. Tar sands, no thanks. It's time to tax the banks. It's such a Canadian chant. Who thanks people in their chants, right? Anyway, Roberta's going to cue me. We sometimes have the people's mic. In this case, it's Roberta's mic. Roberta's going to explain to us what we're going to see now. I did want to explain. A couple of people asked me about the white poppy. We are at the time of years when a lot of people see red poppies. I have nothing against white poppies, but an organization called Stop War, Échec à la Guerre in Montreal, will publish a statement next Saturday explaining why we stand with all victims of war and not just military victims of war, all civilians, all people who are victims of war. So that's what the white poppy is about. And because I know you want your own, Chris Stroud of Bread and Roses Books, who can't be here because his business is at the market, go visit Bread and Roses Books at the second floor at Western Fair Markets. They've got the white poppies. They've also got amazing art calendars for Palestine. Woo! Oh, and now I'm going to introduce Roberta Corey, who grew up in California where she studied art, zoology, and philosophy. Great combo. She taught art at high school and university level and ran prop making workshops with teens. She is past chair and co-chair of the Council of Canadians. With her husband Rory, promoted activism and civic engagement in the London progressive community, and she still does. She volunteered to make the puppet that we're going to see in the studio, and she's going to explain it, and I'm going to repeat what she says.
Okay, as the black pipeline snake enters here.
As the black